Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what is arguably humanity's most profound mystery. What actually happens to our consciousness when we die? I mean, it's the one reality every single one of us is going to face, right? Yet the reality of death is still totally caught in this tug-of-war between ancient spiritual beliefs and modern neurological science. So, let's map out exactly what we know.
To get started, we need to look at a truly baffling medical anomaly. Picture this. It's August 1991. And a 35-year-old woman named Pam Reynolds is in an operating room. She's got a life-threatening brain tumor, and her doctors have to perform this incredibly risky, absolute last resort surgery just to give her a chance.
Now, to operate safely, they literally had to induce clinical death. We're talking stopping her heart with machines, draining the blood completely out of her skull. And to make absolutely sure there was zero sensory input, they taped her eyes shut and put these clicking speakers into her ears. Her brainwaves? Completely flatlined. By every medical definition we have, she was dead.
But miraculously, the surgery worked. Pam revived. But it was what she said when she woke up that totally floored the medical team. She flawlessly described the bone-cutting saw they used on her skull, even comparing it to the handle of an electric toothbrush. And get this, she repeated word for word the conversations her surgeons were having while her brain was entirely shut off. Seriously, how is that even possible?
Section 1. Weighing the Soul. Humanity's Early Attempts to Measure Death.
You know, Pam's impossible surgery is just one piece of this puzzle. We've been chasing proof of the afterlife for a long time. Over a century, actually. Let's rewind a bit to 1901. An American physician named Dr. Duncan McDougall decided he was going to actually prove that the soul had physical weight. He put dying patients on these highly sensitive industrial scales. His big claim? He said human patients lost exactly 21 grams the literal second they died. And he argued that those 21 grams were the actual physical weight of the human soul leaving the body.
Well, as you might guess, his methodology was deeply flawed. Critics quickly pointed out that the 21-gram drop was just evaporating sweat and the last bit of breath leaving the lungs. So McDougall tried to prove them wrong by testing 15 dogs. And what happened? The dogs lost 0 weight. But instead of, rethinking his shaky science, he stubbornly claimed that animals just didn't have souls. Yeah, science pretty quickly abandoned that literal measurement approach.
Section 2. Near-Death Experiences. Mapping the Universal Journey.
So for over 70 years, mainstream science mostly just stayed away from the topic, until a massive cultural shift in 1975. A researcher named Dr. Raymond Moody compiled over 150 stories from patients who clinically died and then came back. He's actually the one who coined the term near-death experience, or NDE. And Moody found this striking, incredibly universal sequence. Check this out. They hear the doctor pronounce them dead, they go through a dark tunnel, float outside their body, meet deceased relatives, see a brilliant beam of light, and then have this rapid flashing life review. For a lot of believers, this exact sequence is undeniable, rock-solid proof of a soul's journey.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. These spiritual claims completely clash with modern medicine. Specifically, they contradict what we call the dependence thesis. This is basically the foundational scientific assumption that every single mental experience, every memory, every feeling you have relies 100% on active brain function. No brain activity, no consciousness. It's as simple as that.
Section 3. The Dying Brain. Neurological Explanations for Mystical Visions.
Because if the brain is off, what exactly are these people seeing, right? Psychologist Dr. Susan Blackmore sums up the scientific counterweight perfectly. She poses the question, are these glimpses of an afterlife, or are they just visions of dying brains? Dr. Blackmore explains that the famous tunnel of light isn't some mystical portal at all. Actually, it's just oxygen starvation. See, our visual cortex has a huge concentration of cells right in the center of our vision and far fewer on the edges. When you cut off the oxygen, those center cells rapidly misfire while the edges fade out. The result? A perfect biological illusion of a bright tunnel.
And we actually have incredible proof that this happens. Ever heard of G-LOC? It stands for G-force-induced loss of consciousness. When fighter pilots get spun around in rapid centrifuges, the intense gravity literally drains the blood and oxygen right out of their brains, and they pass out. And when they wake up, they report the exact same out-of-body tunnel of light visions as dying patients. And they weren't anywhere near death.
Okay, but what about that overwhelming sense of peace, or the rapid flashing of memories? Well, biologically speaking, extreme stress triggers your brain to flood your system with massive amounts of endorphins, which makes you feel totally at peace.
At the same time, a dying brain experiences all these random electrical activations and seizures in the temporal lobe and limbic system. And guess what? Those are the exact regions where your memories are stored. Boom! Instant life review. Section 4. Cultural lenses and anomalies. How expectations shape the afterlife.
Now, moving beyond strict biology, there's another massive piece to this puzzle. What a person actually sees during an NDE seems totally dependent on their cultural upbringing. While Western patients might envision St. Peter waiting at the pearly gates, patients in India report incredibly vivid, culturally specific stories of the Hindu deity Yamaraj. They talk about seeing clerks with ledgers checking their records, and sometimes even being told that the wrong person was brought to the afterlife and sent back. It really looks like the brain is just frantically pulling from familiar cultural scripts as it shuts down.
So, to try and settle this debate objectively, Dr. Sam Parnia launched a massive project in 2001 called the AWARE Study. They monitored over 2,000 cardiac arrest patients across 15 different hospitals. And here was their brilliant idea. They placed secret images up on high hospital shelves facing the ceiling. The logic was simple. If a patient's spirit actually floats out of their body and hovers up near the ceiling during an NDE, they should absolutely be able to see and report those hidden images when they wake up.
So out of those thousands of patients studied, how many could identify the hidden images? Exactly 0. Zilch. They found absolutely no objective proof of consciousness operating outside the physical body.
But, and this is a big but, despite all this overwhelming evidence pointing toward biological hallucinations, anomalies like Pam Reynolds still remain a really stubborn crack in the wall of pure biology. Science honestly still struggles to explain how a woman with tape-shut eyes and plugged ears could know highly specific operational details while clinically dead. I mean, she even knew she'd been given electric shocks twice. That was a super specific detail that our own lead surgeon had completely forgotten about until she reminded him.
Section 5. The reality of death. Why this life is all we can be certain of.
So where does that leave us? Caught between unexplainable medical mysteries and strict neurological science. Well, maybe the answer isn't found in the exact moment of death, but in the moments leading right up to it. Palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware spent years at the bedsides of the dying, and she noticed something profound. Their final, clearest thoughts were rarely focused on what heaven might look like. Instead, they were focused on the reality of how they spent their time right here on Earth. The #1 most common regret? I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me.
The really crucial takeaway from all this source material is that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. While wild anomalies like Pam Reynolds absolutely do exist, an unexplained phenomenon isn't automatic proof of an afterlife. When it comes down to it, the biological reality of our eventual death is pretty much the only absolute certainty we share as a species.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly important thought. If no one has conclusively returned to tell us what happens next, and if those bright lights might just be a dying brain's last-ditch biological defense mechanism, isn't our ultimate imperative to make this life matter? Instead of waiting around for an afterlife, shouldn't we pour all our focus, our energy, and our passion into living truly for ourselves? Maybe the point is to make this current life, right here on Earth, a heaven of our own making. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and